Okay, the Georgia Bulldogs, number one team in the country again this week. This is, I think, 17 weeks in a row that they've been the number one team. It was about this time a year ago that they took the number one spot on. And it doesn't look like they're looking back anytime soon. Not the way they played this past weekend. Georgia with 50 first place votes of the 73 or 63. And Michigan with 11, Ohio State with one vote, and then Florida State with one. Whoever's doing that's being stubborn. I don't know who that person is, but Florida State's not had the season, certainly that Georgia's had. Nevertheless, Michigan or Ohio State, um, I would say they. I just don't see how you can vote Florida State number one with Georgia as an option after last night. Oklahoma at five, Penn State at six, but Washington and Oregon seven and eight. They will play one another this weekend. Texas at nine. USC, which completely survived Arizona at the Coliseum, that was a bad win. I often talk about bad losses. That was a horrible win for USC. I mean, they trailed the whole game basically, rally in the fourth quarter, but they very well could have lost that game to Arizona. They've got Notre Dame this week, I think. But look, if you're Georgia, you are the number one team in the country. I think that is the right call as it stands right now. And I mean, I have to say honestly, I'm not sure how someone else would be a better option. We will get to see Michigan and Georgia play sort of lesser name opponents head to head. Michigan and the Dogs are both 6-0. They're going to be going up against Indiana, who is 2-3, and Vanderbilt, who is 2-5, respectively. Both teams over 30-point favorites to win. This isn't really how you do it. It's sort of how, I mean, Georgia would really have to struggle against Vanderbilt, and Michigan, just win in a pretty solid way. Also, Ohio State is playing uh, against Purdue at the same time. Those are all 12 o'clock kickoffs. Obviously, maybe not so obviously. Georgia Vanderbilt on CBS. So that was, I can explain how that works some other time. And then ESPN will broadcast Alabama at noon. So you've got Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State, Florida State, and Alabama all playing at noon uh, on their respective channels. That's going to be a busy weekend, a busy time slot. I mean, you've got the top three name brands in college football, really the top four, all of them. Georgia, Bama, Ohio State, and Michigan are all there. Um, as we move along, Penn State will host UMass. And then, really, the big match of the weekend to me is Oregon and Washington. So UW and Oregon get together right after Georgia and Vanderbilt get done. That game will be on ABC. So I think Georgia being the one is right. I think that when you look at the situation, they're the best team in the country for now. They've consistently played well. They have done everything you need to do um, to get the job done. And it makes sense. I think it makes more sense now after that performance that they would be about 50, about 5-1 as the number one team makes sense too. I don't know how much they'd be favored over Michigan by. Probably a field goal, maybe a little bit more than that, possibly. I would say Georgia in that game because I think they match up pretty well with Michigan, but it would be a tight game. I mean, Georgia would probably, you'd suppose that they would win that game, but it wouldn't be some sort of certainty. I think the team that they don't match up so hot up against is maybe Florida State if they play well, but you cannot trust Florida State. That's my take on it. I don't know. Here's my other take. Make sure you're checking out EcoPoly. Their link is right down below. This is a table with some high top chairs. You can tell. Now listen, I'm a relatively strong person. That's how well made these are. That you can depend on this thing to be there. 20-year warranty. Obviously, this is red and black. You can get it in a lot of different colors, blue and white. For those of you who are looking for a coastal vibe, there's light browns. There's all sorts of stuff. It's all down below. Check it out. 15% off. There's a code that you can use, and it's also going to give you free shipping. So they ship it from their warehouse or from their manufacturing center, which is in the heart of Georgia in Eastman, Dodge County, home of Leonard Floyd and Ecopoly. So check them out. I am really going to be, this is a fun weekend. You got Oregon UW, Tennessee, Texas A&M. CBS rolled the dice on that one. Kind of came up craps a little bit, but otherwise you'd have had Arkansas, Bama there. So what can you do? Kansas is ranked suddenly. Louisville with a pretty hot Louisville team suddenly here, 6-0 with a really good win over just um, solidly beating Notre Dame, who will fight you. So I thought that was a good win for Louisville. I tell you what, man, the ACC is chock full of lots of fun. Arizona goes to Washington State. I would be very careful if I were LSU. They're hosting Auburn. They are an 11.5 point favorite. They totally could lose that game. Why? Because they are not to be trusted at all in any way, LSU. They are just not a trustworthy situation. And then the big game nationally, there's a couple of them, but here's the one to pay attention to. NBC will have SC and Notre Dame. That is a really could have been a colossal showdown had Notre Dame done what they were supposed to do against Louisville, but they're a 2 point favorite at home against SC. We'll just see what happens there. Miami and North Carolina. That would have been an undefeated ABC primetime showdown. But Miami, I just don't know inexplicably doing that. And then Kentucky will have to get back on the horse and face Missouri. They are not quite a 3 point favorite at home over Mizzou. That means Missouri would be somewhere around a 15 to 17, maybe an 18 point dog this week in Athens if that were the case. And so that would be one of the toughest games Georgia has left. Fox is going to have UCLA, Oregon State. That's another match, ranked versus ranked. Duke, NC State, there's a lot of good football in the ACC. It just doesn't involve it doesn't involve Clemson right now. I mean, we're getting really used to Clemson being really good. They're not that right now. So UCLA, Oregon State, Miami, and North Carolina, SC, Notre Dame, as well as sort of the big game this week, which is Oregon, Washington. We will see a lot this week in the Pac-12. We will see a lot this week in the ACC. We will not see a lot in the SEC. This is not a great week of football in the league. That happens. Week 7 in the SEC is Georgia, Vandy, Arkansas, Alabama. A&M goes to Tennessee. The Gators at Carolina is a curious match. South Carolina almost a 3 point favorite at home. Florida's 4-2, and it really feels like a bad 4-2. So if they can just beat South Carolina, they'll be heading to Jacksonville 5-2, and they can control their own destiny. That's what's on the lines for them in Columbia on Saturday in the afternoon, and then Auburn, LSU, Missouri, Kentucky. Some really, curious matchups to set the plate for what I would say is a pretty decent weekend or string of October games. You got Tennessee, Alabama the week after that, Ole Miss, Auburn, South Carolina, Missouri, and then State and Arkansas, and then Georgia, Florida on CBS, Tennessee, Kentucky, State, Auburn, Carolina at A&M, and then Vandy, Ole Miss. So it's we're at the point of the season where you're getting these marquee games. Now Georgia's just played them. They just played Georgia Auburn, and then Georgia Kentucky in this case was a marquee game. And now we're getting into the prime time, crossover games: A&M and Tennessee, Tennessee, Bama, Georgia, Florida, and then you roll right into LSU, Alabama. That same day you've got Missouri, Georgia. So let's just see how this goes. I think Georgia being the number one team, that makes sense to me. I think they have played in a way that is more dominant than other teams. Michigan does not have a win over a ranked team. They have wins over conference foes, and they have played well at times. They have not played quite the same way Georgia has. And we'll just see how this goes. It's those two right now. Ohio State is not as good as Georgia. I can say that definitively. Uh, the quarterback's not the same as CJ Stroud. It's just not the same. Now they're good. They have firepower, but somebody's gonna have to beat the dogs. They're not just gonna roll over and die. Georgia, number one in the country, again.